Hello and welcome to the Cyber Show. My name is Pip Blake. I'm the Managing Director of Disruptive Cyber Group, and today I am joined by Flavius. Flavius, just give a quick introduction to yourself.
Hi Pip. Thanks for having me here today. My name is Flavius Plesu. I am the founder and CEO of OutThink, world's first cybersecurity human risk management platform. OutThink is a solution used by large, complex organizations to reduce the risk of data breaches involving the human element.
Awesome. Okay. I know we had a quick discussion before this about sort of the various sort of human elements, the behaviour elements of cybersecurity, and particularly sort of that end user risk management surface. So there's obviously been a lot of rhetoric and certainly maybe regulation that's come out recently around end user training and that sort of thing. So how does OutThink help with that?
Well, that's a question prompting a really long answer, but I'll try
we
to
like
keep
long
it
answers.
brief. Right. Well, it can well start with compliance, and for many of the organizations we work with, it starts with that compliance requirement. You got to train your staff, and you got to prove you've done it, right? But using the compliance focus alone, and then doing that for too long, you get into the law of diminishing returns, whereby people become disengaged, they feel they're not getting any value from it, they end up just clicking through to get to the end of the training. And then what happens is, it may give security teams this false sense of, we're good, we've de-risked the operation, we've trained everyone now, people know what to expect and how to respond. And then from the employees, from the end user's perspective, they don't make much sense of it. They feel the security team is just pushing policies and training onto them, and then default to just blocking across the web, the endpoint, the email. There's really that lack of engagement, and that's not a good place to be in.
Yeah, I suppose the last thing we want to happen in that situation is for it just to be a checkbox exercise, which I believe would probably be the worst case scenario if employees aren't necessarily bought into the journey of upskilling themselves in that particular domain. So how do we combat that?
It starts with engagement, and I guess that would have been a better answer to your previous question. It starts with engagement. We see that as the cornerstone of any behavioral change, human risk management program. It starts with engagement. And how do you get people to engage with it? There's a few ways we've identified over the years. I guess the most important one is show appreciation for the person's reality on the ground in the business. And as much as possible, the training needs to be relevant to the organization, relevant to the role, and to the individual being trained. There's many ways to go about that. What OutThink does is we've developed what we call adaptive security awareness training. It does what it says on the tin. It adapts to the individual, and at that point, people get the training that's most relevant to them, and only that in a way that's best understood.
Okay.
And that's the start of any engagement. That's the start of the journey. Our customers, the security teams, the CISO, to want to see attitudes and behaviors coupled with a level of access and an element of threat intelligence, and quantify the risk, and then follow up with people who might be more vulnerable to cyber threats. But the beginning of that maturity journey is just engagement.
And so you silo the particular trainings by industry, by job function, and then ultimately that particular individual has a tailored package that can upskill them within that, within sort of what the business would like them to have visibility of.
That's right. And obviously this needs to be automated. We serve large organizations, anything between 1,000 and 270,000 people globally.
Wow. Okay.
And if you think about that, there's no way for a head of security awareness to create 10,000 variations of a training campaign. So at that point is the technology that delivers that tailored aspect of the training. And there's something else as well. There's listening to people, having people feel heard, that's another important element that helps get that engagement. Traditionally, security awareness training has been one-way communication. If you think about the old do's and don'ts and PowerPoint slides, your top 10 do's and don'ts, it's effectively that with a bit of media, gamified, more interactive, a bit of humor perhaps, some videos. But if that's all we do, deliver training one way, hope that people will sit down, listen, go and change their behaviors, well, we know that's not effective. We know that's not changed for what? Over a decade now. The Verizon data breach investigation report every year points to the fact that the human element is the number one, cause of data breaches. So not just one-way training, but also automate listening to your employees. Effectively ask them, hey, we've told you about encryption, about passwords, about phishing, right? How would you go about that? What does that mean for you, considering your role, where in the business you are, your reality on the ground? And then it's amazing. When we give people that opportunity, they start typing in. I'm not sure about this. I really struggle with that. Perhaps there's a better way.
Yeah. And so that feedback is built into the platform or that particular user's account. That's right.
Into that learning experience, into that interaction, there's constant touch points where people go, hey, I'm not sure about this, how am I supposed to do that and that? And so off the back of that training, security teams identify friction points between security policy and the business requirements. And then I guess the solution will often be apparent, quite clear. Follow up with those people and perhaps help them with those challenges.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about the reporting on the platform. So within say you're talking about organizations of 1,000 individuals up to 27,000, how do you sort of bracket those particular individuals? I know the organizations in the past have, those who score the lowest are described as toxic, which rhetoric-wise isn't necessarily the best way to get engagement, as you've been talking about. So tell me a little bit more about the reporting element of the tool.
Well, it's that maturity journey, and no two customers are the same. We see security teams start with the most basic requirement. Hey, we gotta see who's been trained. We want to see the levels of knowledge. Sometimes they would add in, when it comes to phishing simulations, we want to see who clicked, who reported. Can you give us that? And then perhaps per department, because we want to benchmark and we want to see our most knowledgeable departments best at identifying and reporting phishing emails, and we want to see the opposite. But then they start looking at industry benchmarks, for example, and then as you continue on that maturity journey, they want to start looking at insights. Okay, right. So what are we hearing from our people? At that point, the employees within an organization become the equivalent of a network of human sensors, bringing back information. Here's what's happening on the ground. Were you aware of this? Here's the vulnerability. Here's a shortcoming in this process, or we don't have the right tool. So that's the next level up, where security teams consume those insights, they identify opportunities to improve security within the organization. And then I guess the final level, the third level of maturity, is where they go into what we call predictive human risk intelligence. They're able and keen to understand which of the employees are most vulnerable and most likely to cause that next breach, and they proactively engage with those people. But there's the three levels of maturity, as I described.
Okay. And have you been successful in ultimately changing the behaviours or cultural behaviours of organisations? Because there is a lot of articles out there about cultural change and how it needs to be instilled throughout an organisation across sort of all digital assets and individuals who have access to those assets. So what's your success been like?
I'll just give a strong yes. Yes, we have been able to change that. And some of the detail, perhaps, as an ex-CISO, I used to get on stage. I remember in 2019, InfoSecurity Europe, I had a keynote presentation there, and I said, My first few words were, I am a CISO and I hate security awareness. It overpromises, it underdelivers. And so to me back then, security culture was an extension of that security awareness, all of this conversation around behavioral change. I wasn't a big fan of that. It somehow implied that it's your problem. You got to change your behavior. Everything else is okay in terms of cybersecurity within the organization, but you, the end user, you got to change your behavior. It's your problem. And I never really liked that. So today, the reason why I was able to give that strong yes is because we measure and factor in people's attitudes, people's behaviors, the level of access and threat intelligence. So when we say we quantify human risk, it's those 4 aspects. But people's attitudes and behaviors. And when you factor all of that in, we see that risk line just going down, 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 down. So it is changing. It's actually quite good. Did we eliminate the risk? No way, right? But it's getting better. It's good.
You restricted it somehow. And can you give me a worst case scenario of where you've been brought in and sort of the cultural issues within an organization that you've seen? Obviously don't mention any names with regards to the organizations, but you must have clients where you've seen, and I'm not going to use that toxic word, but maybe if we use the verbiage which you've already used, that there has been literally zero engagement with the end users. What's the sort of worst case that you've seen, and how have you gone about turning it around?
Well, I'll give you 2 stories, and perhaps this is going to be
we love stories.
useful. The people watching this, hey, just avoid doing these 2 things. We still have this banking customer. They've been with us for 5 years now. The first campaigns they were running were painful. 2 hours, 20 modules, really, really painful. That security team was not keen to action any of the intelligence we were surfacing. They just had this simple ask. You're an end user, you're an employee, do your training. Nothing else, we're not interested, do your training. And then they were spending the rest of their time and resources just deploying technical security measures, just effectively blocking everything. And so there was a really, really bad dynamic there between the security team and the organization. There was this lack of trust. The security team was effectively the business prevention department in that bank. It was really not great. And that changed when the CEO of the bank actually decided to remove the CISO and bring about some fresh approach. And so that worked really well eventually, but it was painful in the beginning. And then the second story I have is this team that was just so focused on the training content. It was just all that mattered to them was the training content, the kind of videos they used. Their only reporting was done on, that there's a way to measure engagement, but that's only engagement with training. It's not engagement with cybersecurity in general. They were just measuring the engagement with the training. How many people watched those videos and how funny were those videos? And again, that was a missed opportunity there for the first couple of years. And but that's also our most successful customer, and that is a 25,000 people organization, financial services, and I think they're now the most mature organization we support. Full on cyber human risk management, proactive, learner focused, completely different.
Yeah, and just that. Using your first story, sort of having that 2-hour block of videos, and I've gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this with regard to learning curves and forgetting curves, and I'm sure there is a lot of individuals out there who can speak about. I've been told off for using pedagogical because I've been told it's wrong. That's to do with sort of the learning of education of children, not then it's andrological, I believe, something along those lines. Which I'm saying it wrong, I imagine, but. That's for those the approach to sort of training adults to training professionals, it needs to be different. So how do we need to change from that 2-hour example of a flat video clicking through, which ultimately I think again, there's lots of research out there in terms of how we learn. But how does that, how does your platform, how do the videos, what's the sort of best advice in terms of the research which is out there that you can give to sort of organizations to help develop their individuals, to make sure that they are digesting the learning and videos which they're utilizing, whether it's OutThink or whether it's other platforms which they are training their organizations through? Yeah.
Well, we have developed this adaptive security awareness training technology. And that's been 4 or 5 years of heavy R&D and really smart data scientists, AI engineers, right? That already exists. But it started when I was a CISO and we had 14,000 people we had to train on cyber. And we just needed something that was slightly better. So there's a lot organizations can do themselves in-house. Not everyone needs the OutThink solution. There's a lot of improvements and a lot of gains to be had with just sort of bringing a couple of internal solutions together. How? It's got to be relevant. It's got to be relevant to the person being trained. There's a lot to be said about roles, but it's not just the role. You can start with roles and then think about the tasks that person has to carry out every day. And as a security professional, we can start mapping out, hey, what could go wrong? What could impact the confidentiality, integrity, availability of that information or those systems this person is using to carry out that task. And so you map security risks to those tasks, and then what sort of behavior will we want that end user to exhibit to mitigate those risks? You map out behaviors, and then naturally you map out the required training. And just make a start. Anything's better than just generic 2 hours block of training once a year. Make a start, map it to the role, to the risks. If you can take it further, the level of digital literacy perhaps. You have some people who are really, really good at IT, and then you have people who are a bit nervous when it comes to, hey, don't click on suspicious links. What's a bad link? I don't know. Do you want to teach me domain structure, subdomain, .domain? Yeah. Maybe, but...
Okay.
Appreciate those differences.
Yeah. And with regards to your platform, you have champions, right, that you can have within an organization. So, and that was something that I thought was a real differentiator, because if you have an individual who sort of ultimately is, they have whether they a certification, or we can talk about that forever, given my background. But with regards to sort of having that individual who's ultimately sort of within a team who is not cybersecurity related, nothing to do with sort of the IT team, how does that, how have you seen that impact the organizations that you work with, having a particular champion for HR or a particular champion for finance, for example?
Thank you very much. That's such a great question, Pip.
I try.
Whether it's supposed to call you Philip?
No, Pip's fine.
All right, cool. I'll start again. Hey, thank you very much. That's such a great question, Pip. And we love champions. Typically, there's between 3 and 5% of people we identify within organizations as highly engaged, solid risk appreciation, knowledgeable, and keen to help out. 3 to 5%, that's a lot. When you look at some of these large organizations, that's often more than the size of the entire security team. So all of a sudden, you have this extension of your security team, people on the ground within those various departments and divisions who will actually effectively, free of charge, to work for you. And they will help. And not only you have this extension and people who will help, but they have the full context. They've been working within HR, for example, within that part of the organization, alongside their colleagues, carrying out those tasks, those processes, with all the security processes and blockers around them. And so they often know best how to support their colleagues. And then all security teams have to do, once identified, is reach out to those champions, invite them to join your program, run a champions program. There's perhaps 3 initiatives those champions can actually run for you. You can introduce levels of competence for those champions, and you can train them up. And when we've seen the most successful champions programs, many of those people ended up becoming cyber experts, moving into cyber, acquiring cyber certifications so that they can run those most technical initiatives, part of their champions program. It's really good.
Do you have a badging system whereby you say to those individuals, hey, you are a champion in this particular, because from a hiring perspective, whether they change organizations or stay, it must be quite interesting for that, or engaging for that individual to get a badge, even if they're just an end user.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the number one reason why people put their hands up and they're interested in cyber. Some of them are considering a career change, and some of them actually go forward with that, and so certifications become important. Some of the organizations we work with, they actually fund those. I mentioned the 10 initiatives, the three levels of technical competence. And so at level 3, there's a couple of initiatives there, and that's where they fund cyber certifications for these people to learn and be able to run those initiatives. So you might get a CISM, a CRISC, or even a more technical certification. Yeah. So there's that element of mentoring and guiding your colleagues within that part of the organization. There's also an element of the champion being a change agent within the business. So our customers have access to what we call human risk intelligence. There is a dashboard in there, psychographic segmentation. There are 16 different segments. One of those segments is your champions. 3 to 5% of your organization will typically fall under that segment. And then you have some interesting other segments, people who are disengaged, potential shadow agents. Then it becomes interesting. But back to the champions point, once identified, our customer success team support the customer with running their first champions program. We have all the assets, the program. We've been running this for a few years. We've learned quite a bit, the do's and don'ts of a champions program.
You can't mention shadow agents to me without me sort of touching on it. That's talk me through that. Is that someone who you genuinely might identify as potentially having nefarious intent within an organization? That's because that's scary, right? Those are the organizations. Obviously, identifying your champions is one thing, but at the other end of the spectrum, if you think that someone is proactively harming the security of your organization, how do you deal with that? Because obviously, you don't necessarily want to be the accuser and be wrong, but how does it look? I presume they would see it within the reports, but expand.
Thank you. There's a couple of different kinds of shadow agents. You have people, both kinds have a good appreciation. These are the security measures in place, and they're able to circumvent those security measures. Some of them are simply people who are disengaged. They understand what the security measures are. They're frustrated and disengaged, and they will intentionally bypass security controls to get the job done. There's no maliciousness in that. And then indeed, you have people who will sabotage the organization and will exfiltrate, take data from the organization deliberately. That's a nice word. Let's leave it to that. And so there's an interesting use case there for security operation centers. Now, you and people watching us will be familiar with UEBA technologies. Those technologies will see perhaps certain events, correlate, and give you an indication that might be some insider activity. What OutThink brings in that's quite different and unique, I dare say, is the psychology. Automate mapping the psychology of the individuals within an organization. And so we bring that element. If you picture this iceberg, the events and the behaviors, that stuff above the surface, we can all see that. But quite often what's below the surface that's missed, and that's what OutThink uncovers, the psychology of those individuals, the people who are likely to carry out those behaviors, those events we might see on the surface with malicious intent. So the use case here is OutThink feeds into the SOC, into those dashboards, alert systems, and puts a red flag against alerts coming from people with a shadow agent segment. And so the SOC can prioritize investigating those alerts as a matter of priority, because that might be indeed insider activity.
Okay. Yeah, you can't dangle a carrot like shadow agent in front of me and expect me not to mention anything more to it.
All right.
But we're obviously the overarching theme of this is sort of the future of cybersecurity. So it can take the format of a prediction, it can take the format of a direction that OutThink is heading or would like to see in terms of the end user awareness side of things. But what are your predictions? Where would you like to see the future of cybersecurity awareness going?
Well, I'll start with our vision. Our vision will be the organization securing digital life everywhere, outside of the enterprise, outside of the small organizations. We are seeing this convergence of the old analog life and the new digital life. We all know we rely on digital services for quite serious things these days, from managing our finances, jobs, health, education. And so I believe we're going to see more and more of that. And when cyber criminals disrupt those digital services, then that's going to have an impact on whatever digital life is going to mean into the future. So that's the vision. Now, I think there's a more near-term opportunity for us as an industry. And that opportunity might be human-centric security. You know this well, Pip. Security teams, myself included, computer geeks. That's how we started, the computer science degree. And then what do we love? Technology. Your firewall, your access management, your encryption, your antivirus software, EDR, XDR, right? That's what we have fun with. And then we patch those vulnerabilities. And for many, many years, that has been the approach we've taken. Technology, technical security controls get 90+% of our resources, attention, and we might give some attention to processes, but then when it comes to people, we're going to scratch our heads and go, man, people, I know, give them some training and run some phishing simulations. That's going to be good. Wait, I have a better one. Why don't we also write an acceptable use policy telling them how to behave, and that's going to take care of it? Surely. Has it? Not really. So I do believe there's a massive opportunity for us as an industry here if we bring the human the heart of security operations, and we start with people first. And what that means is helping them acquire digital skills for the 21st century, empowering those people to be more productive, not blocking them unnecessarily. That's what we mean by human-centric security. And then all of the technical security controls wrapping around the human element. I think that's a good opportunity for us, and there's a lot of automation that can help with that. There's a lot of automation OutThink brings, but there's other technologies out there, of course. And it might be our next chapter as an industry, human-centric security. Well,
I know that we're, as an industry, extremely young, so I think there's a lot of progress to be made. So I'm sure we'll head in that direction, or certainly we'd like to see it go in that direction anyway. But I imagine with your assistance, there are lots of organisations out there who can bring the human to that, to the focal point of the organisation, or certainly the security of the organisation. But the final thing we always like to do, Flavius, is enable you to give any shout outs or mention anyone. We've had board members mentioned, we've had wives, kids. I've yet to thank my wife and kids, so it's thank you, or is there anyone that deserves a special mention?
Wow, so many people. It's not going to be easy to pick one. Look, I'll start with, one of my CISO bosses over the years. I was the CISO -1 in financial services, Darren Argyle. Hi, Darren. He was running cybersecurity for IHS Markit. He was the group CISO. We had operations across 70 countries, I believe it was. And Darren helped me understand that there's more to it than just managing security controls. And I think really that's where the OutThink project started within IHS Markit. And I guess as a professional, that for me was a pivotal moment when I started thinking, right, it's about enabling and empowering the organization to do better. Security can be a competitive advantage if we do this well. And that's how we engage with the CXO, with the business leaders. So, Darren, thank you for teaching me that.
Awesome. Well, that's a good shout out, if any. But unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time, Flavius. So thank you very much for coming on. It's really insightful to understand more about the behavioural and human elements of what cybersecurity needs to address. And thank you for telling us a little bit more about your platform and bringing your insights.
Pete, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really, really enjoyed it. It was great fun.
Great, thank you. So everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been The Cyber Show. I've been Pip Blake and you guys have been beautiful. Thanks very much.